Good morning slash afternoon, everyone. It's Monday, May 18th, 2026. We had a massive storm here in the Midwest. It was almost pitch dark this morning for several hours. So I'm getting a little bit of a late start to the session today. Let's look at the news headlines, beginning with Big Tech's vision of the future, which is data centers everywhere. The true cost behind the cloud. While big tech profits soar, communities pay the price. Data centers consume enormous amounts of power, putting stress on the grid, which is already not in a very good condition to begin with. Uses a ton of water for its cooling system, which also creates water contamination at the ground level. Lots of people are now on YouTube talking about the effects of these data centers on their living environment, particularly well water contamination. Also consumes tons of resources, leaving behind skyrocketing bills for everybody because big tech has to buy all of this power. It has to come from somewhere. So automatically that drives up the price of electricity in the region, and also has a effect of a very powerful and very unpleasant noise emanating from the data centers. If you go on YouTube, and I'm not sure how I was turned on to these videos. I've been talking about big tech and data centers here and there, and then all of a sudden YouTube started recommending videos of people talking about data centers on them. So big tech is naturally funneling content to me now based on what I have been looking for and what I have been talking about. This is wonderful, right? You talk about something and then all of a sudden you are steered into channels that display the content, or you're shown ads about it. What is actually happening? So these large tech giants, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, are basically building out all of these data centers. This is their big vision for the future, where data centers are everywhere and anywhere, and they're claiming that it's going to create jobs and prosperity and, all of this and that. I watched an interview with Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. He's going to be spearheading a project in Utah, building one of the biggest data centers ever, and supposedly it's going to consume more power than the entire state consumes on its own at the moment. And I really wonder where they're going to get um, this power from, because we have a massive energy crisis right here. So these data centers depend not only on power being available in the future, but also being affordable in the future, and also in a greater quantity, a much greater quantity than is available now. So I'm not too sure how this is going to work out, but apparently their models say that infinite growth is possible in this space. The real story came from NextEra and Dominion to merge in utility megadeal aimed at grid expansion to power AI boom. So I'll just read the first part of this. I've got ChatGPT here, of course, to summarize and bullet the article so we don't have to read the whole thing. As power demand surges on the back of data center buildouts, with hyperscalers expected to unleash about 700 billion in capex this year to expand AI infrastructure and maintain an edge over China in the AI compute race. We're very concerned with outpacing China in the AI race, and we're going to demand lots of power. Very interesting. NextEra Energy and Dominion Energy are moving to scale up. The utilities agreed to a $67 billion all-stock merger that would create the world's largest regulated electric utility network. They're going to need the infrastructure to power these data centers because it does not exist at the moment. Here is the summary. Top-down bullets, NextEra Dominion utility mega deal. NextEra Energy and Dominion announced a massive all-stock merger aimed at scaling U.S. power infrastructure for the AI data center boom. The combined company would be the largest regulated electric utility by market cap, one of the world's biggest power companies, and a dominant U.S. grid operator. Combined footprint, 10 million customer accounts. Operations stretching from Florida through the Carolinas into Virginia, 110 gigawatts of generation capacity. In order to get 110 gigawatts of generation capacity, liquefied natural gas is one of the main sources of power for the gas turbines. You need billions and billions of cubic feet of natural gas. Well, there's a lot less natural gas in the world available due to the Strait of Hormuz being closed. We're going to get to that on the Hormuz deficit clock in a minute. Major strategic purpose: build and expand AI grid infrastructure fast enough to support exploding electricity demand from hyperscalers, manufacturing, reshoring, EV electrification. The utopia is electric vehicles and AI data centers and this and that, and everything depends on lots and lots of power and energy available. I do not see how this is realistic at the moment. Northern Virginia Data Center Alley is the key reason for this merger. Dominion already powers one of the largest concentrations of AI cloud infrastructure in the world. NextEra emphasized scale matters because larger utilities can finance projects cheaper, buy equipment at scale, accelerate transmission buildouts, and deploy generation faster. I saw a little clip of Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, who we're going to get earnings from this week, where he said we're going to need about 1,000 times more power or just something astronomically ridiculous. I mean, where are they going to get this from? The companies are framing the merger politically as necessary for national grid expansion. We're going to turn this into a national issue. It's going to be regulated. There's going to be some sort of incredible national emergency to build these data centers, while also claiming it can keep consumer power prices affordable. The merger massively increases exposure to the PJM grid region, the largest U.S. power market operator, heavily tied to AI infrastructure and growth. Energy mix of the combined company would include natural gas, nuclear, solar, wind, battery storage. Solar and wind are not going to even come close to be able to power these things. Solar and wind are gradual buildups that, you could use to power farms and, home electricity type of setups. The solar and wind are not going to be able to meet the demands of these data centers. The merged utility would reportedly become number one in renewables, battery storage, largest gas-fired generation owner. I said natural gas is at the top of this list here. AI power demand numbers are becoming extreme. Utilities are discussing massive future load requests. Combined pipeline reportedly exceeds 130 gigawatts. That is a lot of power. Gigawatts. They're expected to spend $700 billion expanding AI infrastructure. Market reaction: Dominion shares surged. Of course, stocks go up when we announce big projects. More debt to fund these projects. More credit to fund these projects. The endless supply of debt and credit fuels the stock market rally. We're going to get into that in a second as well. Major concern going forward: regulators may fear excessive utility concentration, rising consumer bills. They're already confirmed completely out of control in a lot of locations where these data centers have already been installed, and too much dependence on massive AI-related power expansion. The merger still requires federal antitrust approval. No problem. We'll get that pushed through immediately. State utility approvals, that may take a little bit longer, but not too much longer. And shareholder approval. That is exactly what we're going to do. Does that mean more profits for us? Do it. With expected closing timeline around 12 to 18 months. Bigger macro theme: the AI boom is now directly reshaping utility markets, transmission grids, natural gas demand, nuclear restarts, and capital allocation across the entire U.S. energy sector. That was a lot to handle. Let's take a deep breath. I then said, search the web for recent stories of people being forced off their land with eminent domain clauses tied to data center expansion by big tech and the surge in neighborhood power bills. Summarize this and cite sources. Do a few heavy hitting stories only. This is another thing that I discovered when I was on YouTube last night, is that there are people that apparently are being given notices of eminent domain, and they need to vacate their land or cough it up at a price that has already been conjured up by the authorities that are basically needing this land for energy corridors. They're needing to build out more pipelines and wires and stuff. And all of a sudden, it's this eminent domain thing that they're invoking on these people's land. Wisconsin artist facing eminent domain for AI data center power buildout. It says one of the strongest recent stories involves rural Wisconsin residents potentially losing land to support AI infrastructure expansion. An ABC News investigation focused on artist and conservationist Tom Utek, whose family property could be partially seized through eminent domain tied to transmission expansion for a proposed 600-acre AI data center project. That's a 600-acre facility built from the ground up on this guy's ranch, basically. And they're going to take it by force if they can with this eminent domain thing. Residents are not necessarily losing land directly to the data center itself. Instead, utilities may seize corridors for high voltage transmission lines, substations, grid infrastructure needed to power hyperscale AI facilities. Big tech is not going to directly take your land. They're going to do it indirectly through other channels. They're very creative and sophisticated, aren't they? Locals argued that they were being displaced to serve private corporate demand rather than traditional public necessity. So this is now a public necessity that these data centers are being built and constructed. The report framed this as a nationwide trend emerging from the AI power race. There are more stories here. Georgia, homeowners fighting transmission corridors for massive data center expansion. Georgia has become one of the heaviest battlegrounds. An Atlanta Journal-Constitution investigation documented homeowners in Fayette and Coweta counties pushing back against Georgia Power transmission products linked to exploding data center growth south of Atlanta. Heavy-hitting details. Georgia Power plans up to 1,000 miles of new transmission lines statewide. Much of the expansion is tied to giant projects from QTS, Microsoft, hyperscale AI cloud operators. Residents reported fears of land seizure, destroyed tree buffers, falling property values, industrialization of formerly rural communities. These are farming type of rural communities. How are we going to grow food and raise animals with data centers everywhere? Wait a minute. We're going to print more crops. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to print more beef. We're going to 3D print meat. That's how we're going to do it. My mistake. The article described protests over overhead transmission lines, anger over resonating waves, fears that ancillary infrastructure for AI is permanently changing communities. Well, it's very clear from the YouTube videos that I watched last night that it is definitely permanently changing communities. Electricity price explosion, consumers hit with massive power increases. The biggest utility cost story centers around PJM, the largest U.S. power market covering much of the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic. A federal market watchdog report said AI data center demand caused a 75% jump in wholesale electricity prices. Your power bill is going up by 75% or more. Wholesale prices reportedly jumped from $78 megawatt hour in 2025 to 137 megawatt hours in 2026. So consumers are facing higher electricity costs with data centers, higher gasoline costs due to the war, There's wars everywhere now. A quick trip through the headlines here. We could see that Iranian denial, oil rebounds after Iranian denial will under no circumstances give up nuclear program to end war. They struck a couple of nuclear facilities, one in Israel, one in UAE over the weekend. Trump hit some more targets in Iran, and oil refineries all over Russia are blowing up. So the war is not getting any better. We are not going in the direction of peace. There are no negotiations. Looks like there was a Russian drone that hit a Chinese ship in the Black Sea. Putin and Xi are supposed to meet in less than 24 hours. The situation is obviously completely out of control. Ukraine is hitting facilities in Russia. There are nuclear facilities being hit in the Middle East by Iran. We are striking more targets in Iran. This is, oh, we also have Cuba. So now there's a Cuban crisis. So now we're going to move some resources into Cuba. So, oh, and just wait, China may do something in Taiwan. So now we'll just have war in 5 different places. That's definitely going to provide lots of abundant energy in the future, right? Here's that Scale Matters article. You could check that out if you want. It's on Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge is pretty good. Some of the stories are politically biased, but it's a good, you know, all-around collection of what's going on. But definitely do your own research and, you know, take everything with a grain of salt. That Russian refinery story, I had Gemini search the web for the Russian story, and basically it says that Ukrainian drone and long-range strike campaigns against Russian energy infrastructure have sharply intensified over the last few weeks. According to analyses from Reuters, Bloomberg, and regional intelligence tracking, Ukraine has hit around 12 different refineries and major oil export facilities in this recent wave. In total, the broader campaign has successfully disrupted operations at 9 major Russian refineries that have had to partially or completely suspend production since the start of spring. Key refineries targeted: late April to mid-May. The Perm refinery is the biggest one, hit by drone strikes in early May, forcing Lukoil's facility, Russia's 7th largest refinery, to completely halt crude processing and fuel production after multiple primary distillation units were taken offline. There is the Kurishi oil refinery, Leningrad, Russia's 2nd largest oil refinery, stopped operations completely. Tuapse refinery, Black Sea coast. The Rosneft-owned facility suffered a hat trick after being struck 3 times in a 2-week span, crippling its export capacity, forcing it into an extended shutdown. Yaroslavl refinery erupted in a massive fire in late April. Novorossiysk, I can't pronounce that. I need to work on my Russian. Heavily damaged in mid to late April, disrupting Black Sea crude diversions. The broader impact: lowest throughput in decades. The April and May strikes forced Russian oil refining runs down to 4.69 million barrels per day, their lowest collective level in over 4 years, a drop of roughly 12 to 18% compared to pre-war baselines. That's 12 to 18% drop. Economic toll: Bloomberg and Reuters report that April-May campaign knocked out roughly 700,000 barrels per day of active refining capacity, combined with simultaneous attacks on major Western export terminals. The disruptions have slashed billions of revenue from Moscow's federal budget. What is the estimated impact on the world supply of crude oil? What was Russia's contribution before the Gulf War started in March of this year? Was the next prompt I gave it. It said the eruption of the Middle East conflict in early March 2026 sent shockwaves through the global energy sector, triggering what the IEA has termed the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. I've got the new model fresh off the press from Claude. Let's open that up. Here we go, the recalculated Hormuz deficit clock, 79 days into the conflict, 17 hours, 17 minutes, 50 seconds. Total barrels of crude oil lost since closure, 1.1 billion barrels no longer available. 13.8 million barrels a day missing, 160 barrels lost per second, 104 global daily demand, effective supply 91, world supply destroyed 13.3%. We're going to lose 97 million barrels by the end of the week. This is now 2.44 times the Arab oil embargo. These numbers are the same from last week, the IEA coordinated release of 400 million barrels over the next couple of months, of which we are responsible in the U.S. for 172 million barrels. And that is going to push our strategic reserve levels lower. We started with 415. We're at 387 right now. And this is where we're going to be at when we're done releasing the 172 with the coordinated release. The total SPR draw so far is 22 million point 3. Max SPR draw per day. The most we can pump out of there per day is 4.4 million. We have distillate stocks at 99.21, down 9%. 5-year average 442 available in commercials, down 0.3% on the 5-year average. So we still have some commercials. Gasoline stocks are down. Average SPR draw for the week 2.2. Average gasoline draw 4.1. Gasoline here in the Midwest, $5.29 a gallon for regular, around $6.65 for diesel. Crude oil is trading at 105, let's just call it. So we started at 65 WTI. This is last week's figure at the high, 102.80. The Goldman fair value, $160 per barrel. That's assuming a 10-week closure of the Strait of Hormuz. We are now 9 days over 10 weeks. 10 times 7 is 70. 79 minus 70 is 9 days overdue. The Goldman model is blown. The best and the brightest in the industry, they came up with a model for this. It is now blown overdue. We're possibly going to see much higher prices. The current high is 117.63. At a discount of $57 a barrel at the current price, $55 a barrel discount to war premium expected at $95 a barrel. Wow. This is the reality. But wait, everything's going to be fine because we're going to get NVIDIA earnings on Wednesday. So while all of this is going on, while the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, while the global crude oil supply is in the worst situation it's ever been, and that's just the crude oil supply and the gasoline supply, not to mention all the other downstream products and things that are affected by this. We'll get into that later, the 12 to 18 month, impact on crops and, fertilizers and everything else, right? Well, while all this is going on, we have once again a hyper-focused group of people that are enamored and hypnotized by stock prices and what is actually going on with the stock market right now. So the stock market is coming off the all-time high. We could see here that the NASDAQ did hit a high of almost 30,000. We came off of that. We're right now at 29,000, basically 28,992. The S&P is at 74.10. The high was around 75.40, so we've come off of that a little bit. We can see that the gasoline is now 374.58. We are getting above the resistance here in gasoline. The resistance was 370. We're now trading 374. So the gasoline is threatening to push another multi-year high very, very soon. It has not been this high since the start of the Ukraine war. We have crude oil at 106.63. We're going to make a run pretty soon for that 115 mark. There is no possibility of any sort of favorable outcome over the next couple of days unless Trump can magically pull several rabbits out of his hat again and manage to calm the market down. I don't see how they're going to be able to calm the market down. at this point. We can see that the overnight action in crude was, darn it, I just made a mistake. Get out of that right away. We could see that the crude oil market definitely took a dive here. So, oh, and I want to mention that the crude oil stopped trading last night. So I turned this on, and a few minutes after the open, the crude oil market simply stopped updating. The gasoline was continuing to trade, the NASDAQ was continuing to trade, the crude oil futures, the large crude oil futures, the regular contract, didn't update for about an hour. It was frozen. The micro crude was trading, the heating oil was trading, but the crude oil was not trading at all. So it apparently had some kind of glitch or was shut off, or I have no idea. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen the market just stop trading mid-session like that. So it eventually came back on after about an hour. It pushed a high of 108.60. Then it came off pretty good. It touched the previous day's high. Then there was a catastrophic sell-off here this morning from 106.80 down to 104.5. So it dropped 200 ticks real quick. I'm really wondering what the catalyst was for that. And then it proceeded to trade even lower over the next couple of hours, and it opened the session on the low. And we've been rallying steadily, ever since. So when we sit down to trade this morning, the crude oil has already been knocked down off the high about 500 ticks. Now it's at 106.60. Very, very strange action in crude. We could see from the NASDAQ overnight picture that the NASDAQ went down, and then the NASDAQ hit a support here at 28,900, and then we came up to the resistance at 29,400 shortly before the market opened. So the crude oil opens on the low of the session, and the stock market opens on the high of the session, and then reality starts to set in, and NASDAQ's down about 400 from the high, and now crude oil is working its way back up. So that is the synopsis of what has been happening here in the market today. I cannot wait to see what happens tomorrow and over the course of the evening, as the war is probably going to intensify. We are going to get NVIDIA earnings, like I said, on Wednesday. So that's going to be a big impact. We are also going to get the FOMC minutes. So on Wednesday, we're going to get the FOMC minutes at 2 p.m. This usually doesn't really move the market too much, but it does have an impact because there is Fed speak and dialogue surrounding the FOMC minutes release. I know that was a lot. Take a couple of deep breaths. We definitely have a lot to digest here for the week in the market. So I will let you guys go for now. Thank you for stopping by, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.